In this way, if Russia will get a break on the war against Ukraine without giving up original purposes, Russia will strike again soon. Russia does not need a complete restoration of military power. Russia does not need manufacturing of thousands of tanks first before another round of the war. Russia can strike even without battle tanks. There is a solution. In case of chaos inside of Russia, it's possible to denuclearize Russia without occupation of the whole Russian territory. They were planning a war of revenge. They wanted the revenge for the Cold War.
Hi, Pavel. Thank you so much for joining me. You often talk about the current inadequacies in terms of what Russian military has and their equipment and their strategies. As we're approaching possible peace negotiations and even possible peace agreements, what is your current assessment in terms of fighting capacity, both on the Russian and the Ukrainian side?
Hi, Darina. First of all, I never comment Ukrainian capacity. I comment only the Russian one because I study only the Russian one. Even if I have some opportunity to compare combat capacities of two countries, I never do this in public. It's a matter of professional ethics for me. Towards the Russian combat capacity, in case of any peace deal, ceasefire agreement, and so on, we do have the first problem. Russia will get a room for maneuver. Even if Russia has become much weaker in terms of military power than it was 3 years ago, Russia still has some capacity. And moreover, Russia still has a will to fight. Even if Russia has a deficit of main battle tanks, armored vehicles, qualified manpower, qualified commanders, Russia still has will to fight. And we can compare this, I don't know, with Hamas in October 2023. Hamas didn't have any military industrial complex. They had some manufacturing of small missiles, tactical range missiles.
Yeah.
But they didn't have sophisticated weapons. They just wanted to fight. They had will to fight. And they did what they did. The same is true for Russia. We like to calculate an amount of recruitment of manpower. We like to calculate, I don't know, or like to assess production rates of some types of arms and so on. But we cannot calculate, we cannot assess will to fight.
Yeah.
We can only say whether or not they are ready to fight, or they prefer peace, or they gave up their original purposes of the war. Russia did not give up original purposes of the war.
Yeah.
So Russia still demonstrates, Russian elite, Russian society, those people who sign contracts, they demonstrate will to fight. Even if those soldiers who commit suicide on the battlefield, they demonstrate the will to fight because what? Because they don't want to be prisoners of war.
Yeah.
If this person, any single person, is ready to commit suicide, being a soldier, probably this person is definitely ready to kill another person.
Is that a Russian person, or are you talking about the Korean soldiers?
I talk only about the Russian soldiers.
No, I mean like Korean soldiers. I feel like that was very widespread among them.
Korean soldiers, they are not widespread because there are only 15,000 of them. It's a significant amount of soldiers, but it's just several percent of the total amount of Russian troops.
Yeah.
So we can discuss Korean soldiers on the battlefield. What does it mean for Russia? What does it demonstrate?
What does it demonstrate, you think?
It demonstrates that Russia is not so powerful like it wants to present itself. And it is the first time in history, at least in the modern history, when one foreign army fight against another foreign army on the Russian soil. Ukrainian army against Korean army.
On the Russian soil, that's true.
Yes. And we didn't have this before. Even in civil war, Bolsheviks fought against white movement, and white movement got support from Entente, from the coalition, and coalition forces were on the Russian soil, but they fought against Bolsheviks.
Do you think it's embarrassing for Russia to have two foreign armies fighting on its soil?
It is a sensitive topic for the Russian elite. That's why they do not want to take attention on this, to focus on this. Towards the Russian people, on the one hand, they don't care. They completely don't care. They don't care about Kursk. They don't care about Crimea. They don't care about Russian-speaking Donetsk and Luhansk People's republics or something like that. They don't care. On the one hand. On the other hand, it demonstrates to the Russian society that everything is possible. 3 years ago, we could not imagine this situation. Now it's a normal situation. So normalization of chaos.
Yeah.
Prigozhin in Rostov-on-Don in June 2023. It's normal. Russian Volunteer Corps was Ukrainian Armed Forces.
Yes.
RDK. Just 10 kilometers from the nuclear weapon storage base in Belgorod in May 2023. No one cares. Everything is possible. Today, Ukrainian army for 9 months already, 8 months in Kursk region, in Belgorod region. No one cares. North Korean army on the Russian side. No one cares.
Yeah.
Everything is possible. Everything is normal. Okay, if this is possible, maybe some new faces in the Kremlin are also possible. Why not? No one cares about this.
Yeah. I feel like the one thing they care about is that there are no new faces in the Kremlin. That's the only thing they care about.
Yeah, but if you are a politician, if you are part of the ruling class, if you are part of the ruling group, you should care about your power, because
Yeah.
power, it is a dynamic conception.
Yeah.
And you do have power when you can use your power. If you cannot use your power, if you cannot control the situation, if your governor cannot manage the situation with, Kursk governor, the previous one, cannot manage the situation with refugees,
Yeah.
if your ministers cannot manage the situation, do you have power? If you need to ask North Korean forces to assist you in your country,
Yeah.
whether or not you still have power, or to be more correct, more precise, what amount of power do you have? Where is the limit of your power? Because 3-4 years ago, you believed that your power is limitless.
Yeah.
At least inside the Russian borders. And now we see that, firstly, there are no Russian borders. Russia doesn't have internationally recognized borders. If you pretend on 5 regions of Ukraine, and you occupied at least Crimea fully occupied, and 4 regions partly occupied, why do you believe that no one can pretend on Kuril Islands in the Russian Far East, or on pieces of your territory somewhere in northwest?
Yeah.
So Russia doesn't have internationally recognized borders. The power, the political power inside these borders is not limitless.
Yeah.
The formal source of power, Russian people, they do not play their role according to the Russian constitution. So where is your power? What is the limit of your power? And whether or not we can define Russia as a sustainable state, or maybe we should analyze if Russia on the road to the failed state. A lot of questions, and all these questions have been raised by the war against Ukraine. And in this way, back to your first question, currently the Russian army is in trap in Ukraine. Any ceasefire would consolidate not Russian borders, but at least the front line.
Yeah.
Because there will be a line of separation of two forces, and Russia will get a room for maneuver. And currently, only the war, the state of the war, even if it is not declared officially by Russia, currently the state of the war approves Russian political leadership, legitimizes Russian political leadership.
Yeah.
Because if there is no war, so what is the plan? What is the agenda?
That's going to be a tough question to answer.
In this way, if Russia will get a break on the war against Ukraine without giving up original purposes, Russia will strike again soon. Russia does not need a complete restoration of military power. Russia does not need manufacturing of thousands of tanks first before another round of the war. Russia can strike even without main battle tanks. And if Russia will get the room for maneuver, Russia may strike not only on Ukraine, Russia may strike on the Baltic states, on Norway, on Finland.
I have seen some reports that Russia is building out their military capacity by the Nordic borders, I think by Finland and Estonia, and it's like a 2-year built-out plan.
We have to divide your question on two parts. First part, Russian army permanently constructs something somewhere. It's a permanent process.
Okay.
Because when you constructed something 30, 40, 50 years ago, after that you need to reconstruct this. You need to make a reconstruction. You need to create something new, to destroy something old. It's a permanent process. So we have to assess this in a longer term, because according to my observations, all these, Putin's decades in power, even in 1990s, before Putin, when Russia didn't have so big amount of petrodollars.
Yeah.
Russian military constructed something permanently.
Yeah.
Sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully, but they did this work.
Is this to drive fear, or?
It's just a permanent systemic, institutional, bureaucratic process. Your facilities are deteriorating, you need to renew them. Or one day you decide, okay, we have to change the structure of our military bases. In this way, we have to construct new bases and to abandon all bases. That's how it works. It's the first part of your question. The second part of your question is also institutional, because in March 2024, Russia divided its Western military district on two military districts: Moscow military district and Leningrad military district. The name, Leningrad.
Yes.
These districts existed before 2010. It's a long-term tradition established by Bolsheviks. And if you divide one military district into two military districts, you have to double a common structure. That means you need bases. Also, the North Fleet of Russia, that had a status of military district since 2010. Now it is not military district anymore. It is a part of Leningrad military district.
Okay.
The North Fleet had an area of responsibility. It was Arctic regions, from the western part of Russian Arctic regions to the eastern part of the Russian Arctic regions. From Barents Sea to Pacific Ocean, to Bering Sea. And now it is all. It's not all about Leningrad military district. Now that means the North Fleet switched its focus from the Arctic region to Europe. Because of what? Because Russian military districts, as well as the Soviet military districts before, they play a role of war theaters or war destinations, direction of offensive operations. And that means if you restore Moscow military district, its area of responsibility strictly to the west. Belarus, northeastern parts of Ukraine, and partly Baltic states.
Yeah.
If you have Leningrad military district, its area of responsibility, Baltic states, Scandinavia.
Yeah.
In Scandinavia. And Arctic parts of Scandinavia.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And also, Russia has other military districts, like Central Military District. In terms of geography, it is the biggest military district of Russia.
Yeah.
And this district has some military bases. These military bases can be relocated.
Yeah.
These military units, motor rifle brigades, artillery brigades, they can be transferred between the military districts.
Based on priorities.
Yeah, like it was, for instance, with the 20th Combined Army of Russia, which changed the headquarters from Nizhny Novgorod to Voronezh in 2018, when the Russian leadership realized that it's not the end. I mean, all these affairs with Ukraine since 2014. They started to change its structures. And they deployed some military formations, like combined armies, closer to the border with Ukraine. So, and some units, 20th Combined Army from Nizhny Novgorod to Voronezh, it was the same military district, Western military district. But some motor rifle brigades came from the Central military district to the Western military district on the eve of invasion. Came not temporarily, came permanently. They changed headquarters.
Yeah.
They have been transferred from one district to another district. And they constructed new military bases in Rostov-on-Don region, in Voronezh, all around the Ukrainian border. So if there is Leningrad military district, if there is some construction activity, we have to see what military units will appear there. And Central military district may be a donor of these units.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Eastern military district also can be a donor if Russia believes that there will no any troubles with China, with Japan, and so on and so on. And Eastern military district is also big enough. And there is a long, huge border with Mongolia. I suspect Russia does not expect any invasion from Mongolia.
That's fair.
But there are in Zabaikalsky region there are many military units, motor rifle brigades, and so on and so on. Many of them engaged into the war against Ukraine, of course. But they have some reserves, especially if we talk about drafted soldiers. Not contracted ones, but drafted ones. Because drafted soldiers can be used in the war. And they are in use in the war against Ukraine. So we have to watch not only on the construction activity, but also on the structural forces.
And from what you're describing, especially how the Arctic district or forces are sort of refocusing on Europe, there's both the construction and the structural indications.
Yes, they're focusing on Europe, and if they create new bases, new facilities, without abandoning the old facilities, that means they're going to be expanded, and that means there will be transferring of units from other military districts to this destination. We just need to wait. We just need to see what's going on.
In terms of Russian ability to produce artillery and equipment, do they have solid production, or have sanctions sort of hindered their ability to have all of those operations set up?
Of course, they can't produce artillery shells and artillery barrels for howitzers, but they cannot, at least as what we see for today, they cannot extend this production gradually. That's why they still rely on North Korean artillery shells. The first supplies of artillery shells from North Korea and missiles, tactical ballistic missiles, the first supplies came to Russia in October or November 2023. 1 year and a half ago. And these supplies still take place. So this is a permanent process. North Korea supplies Russia with artillery shells because Russian domestic manufacturing does not give enough production output. And if on the prior 2022, 2021, for example, Russia produced more than 1 million artillery shells from scratch, from zero, and repaired about 500,000 artillery shells from stockpiles because they became old enough, they needed to be repaired. So the total amount was about 1.7 million artillery shells a year. Now it is about 2 million shells a year. And of course, that facilities that were engaged into the repair process, they could be switched to the production from scratch. But according to the statistic data, we don't see a significant increase of production of chemical components needed for artillery shells. There is increase, but it is not in 2 times, 3 times. It's just 20-30%. Ministry of Defense, Russian military industrial corporations, they manipulate these numbers not only for observers, for foreigners, like, oh guys, we are so powerful and strong. They manipulate these numbers also for the Russian leadership.
Yeah.
Because they try to present themselves in a better condition than they are.
Yeah. I think that's kind of one of the biggest weaknesses of an authoritarian regime, is that you're so afraid to be the bearer of bad news that you just lie about it.
No, it's a power, and it is a weakness at once, because authoritarian regime, any authoritarian regime can accumulate sources on some specific things. Like Russia has been preparing for the war for decades.
Yeah.
Even before Vladimir Putin, Russia began preparations for the war, hypothetical war against the West.
Yeah. Always be preparing for the war seems to be a Russian thesis.
They were planning a war of revenge. They wanted the revenge for the Cold War defeat. We can find this in documents of 1990s. We can find this in some official statements of 1990s. We can find this in some ideological papers and books which appeared made by Russian philosophers in that times. And a lot of things appeared there before Vladimir. Vladimir Putin spent his time in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
The idea of the war existed in 1990s already existed.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the military capacity production. I feel like shells, that seems to be one of the more simpler things to produce. When we also talk about tanks and drones and planes and surveillance systems, those would be more complicated. Does Russia have a capacity to produce those, especially being under Western sanctions?
It depends on what types of artillery shells you are talking about. Because if you're talking about so-called dump shells or dump bombs, yeah, they are simple enough. But they're not so cheap. Typical, I know, 152 millimeter artillery shell cost $1,000 to $3,000.
Wow.
One FPV drone costs several hundreds of dollars. But of course, one small FPV drone can carry only, I don't know, a pound of explosives. 1 pound, yeah, 400 grams. And one artillery shell, it is several kilograms of explosives. Even if it is dumb enough, yeah, the area of damage is big enough.
Yeah.
But if we speak about high precise artillery shells, they cost about $100,000
Wow.
each. If we speak about UMPK, it's precise, high precise device which you can add to gravity bomb, typical gravity bomb, and you can make this bomb like precise bomb.
Okay.
And this device, this UMPK, costs tens of thousands of dollars per each, plus the cost of the bomb itself. So it's not so cheap. But if we speak about drones, they're cheaper. They have a shorter range, just up to 20 kilometers. They can be sent precisely on the target. They can be sent at any single person, soldier, on the battlefield. But at the same time, it's a kind of compromise. It's a kind of compromise. You don't have powerful, high precise, long-range weapons. You use drones instead of them. You use drones, and you make these drones because you don't have access to components.
Yeah.
Because Russia does not produce components for the drones, all the components for the drones. Because you need not only some electronic devices on board, you need small engines, electric motors, you need GPS chips on board, a lot of things. And Russia purchases this from China.
Iran?
Iran, it's about Shahed drones.
Yeah.
They are more powerful. They are replacement of sophisticated cruise missiles.
Okay.
And they are also a compromise. Because Russia could carry, I don't know, more than 100 cruise missiles at once in 2022, day by day. And now Russia use 30, 40, 50, 60 cruise missiles once a month against Ukraine. Yeah? But tens and sometimes hundreds of drones every day. I mean, Shahed drones. So it's a kind of also compromise. And Russia purchases components, and Russia produces the drones domestically, or or makes an assembly of drones domestically, like Iranian Shaheds.
How about the very much like the most complicated things one would need for the war? And I'm not sure what those exactly be, but I'd imagine surveillance systems, planes, perhaps tanks.
So surveillance system, it's a long-term weakness of Russia. Russia, since 1990s, since early 1980s, in Soviet Union, realized that there were troubles with intelligence. They managed these troubles somehow, but it have never been comparable to the NATO capabilities. And the main bet of Russian forces during the aggression, full-scale aggression against Ukraine, was human intelligence, agents on the ground, infiltrated agents or recruited agents on the ground. People who can walk there, see something, make a photo and send this photo through telegram to the intelligence officer in Moscow, and in a couple of hours or couple of days after that, missile can hit this place. Russia has a huge deficit of satellite intelligence or electronic signal intelligence aircrafts. Russia does not have too many of them.
Is that something they would be able to produce, or do they
No,
just don't have technology?
They try to get the technologies, but another problem is how to produce this at home. And Russia cannot produce these systems domestically. But Russia tries to get access to commercial satellite images, for instance, from abroad through the network of firms and entities registered in Dubai, in Malaysia, and some other places. Russia tries to purchase these images and deliver them to military, but you cannot do this on time.
That makes sense.
Yes, satellite moves through the place on Monday, but you can get this image maybe months later, and you cannot have images on time, but somehow Russia still can use these images. If we speak about relatively static front line, Russia can analyze where is the construction appeared and so and so. Oh, aviation itself, regardless, signal intelligence, electronic intelligence, aircrafts, aviation itself also does not perform very well on the Russian side. But comparing to what Russia wanted to have.
Yeah.
But comparing to what Russia had 20 years ago or 15 years ago, Georgia, for instance, the war against Georgia in 2002, Russia improved its capabilities, because 15 years ago these capabilities were even far from what Russia wanted to have, because Russia wanted to get the similar air power capabilities like NATO has. Maybe not the United States, but like, I don't know, United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Or something like that. No, Russia did not achieve this goal, this purpose. Drones also kind of compromise here. But nevertheless, Russian planes conduct more operations than they did not only in Chechnya or Georgia, but also in Syria. But of course, Russian air power, thanks God, Russian air power is far from being too effective, too efficient.
Yeah. How about tanks? You mentioned that you could launch an attack without tanks. Is that what you think? Like Russia will, like, are they able to produce tanks, and how important tanks are?
They produce tanks. They still modernize the remaining tanks from stockpiles, from the Soviet era stockpiles. But these stockpiles are going to be depleted in coming several months. And of course, what Russia took from this stockpile bases, storage bases, I don't know, in June 2024, brought this to factory made some work. This tank may appear on the battlefield in June 2025.
Yeah.
Usually much earlier, but we cannot exclude that sometimes the process can take a longer time than it was planned originally. But nevertheless, the stockpile of tanks would be depleted soon. And Russia will have facilities. Currently, these facilities are engaged into the modernization and repair process of tanks, and then these facilities can be switched to production of completely new main battle tanks. But if in 2021 Russia produced 30-40 completely new main battle tanks, then it was able to increase this production to 50, 60, 70. Maybe this year Russia will be able to increase the production of completely new main battle tanks up to 100, for example. But Russia lost several thousands of tanks, and even 100 main battle tanks. Yeah, it's 3 battalions, but it is not enough for restoring of military power, like it was before 2022. But nevertheless, it's still 100 tanks.
Yeah.
And while Russian army, I again repeat this, while the Russian army is in the trap in Ukraine, it cannot be used somewhere else. If Russia will get a break in Ukraine, Russia can use these tanks and missiles and artillery shells somewhere else. Because the original purposes of the war, they have not been achieved. But Russia did not give up these purposes. These purposes are, firstly, of course, elimination of Ukrainian statehood, elimination of Ukrainian culture, but also elimination of NATO. And it was openly declared, well documented in December 2021. NATO must be eliminated.
But that seems like an impossible task.
Why
Well,
it is impossible?
First of all, Russia is failing in Ukraine in terms of what they initially wanted to do. And then Ukraine isn't even in NATO. I feel like if you wanted to challenge NATO's idea, sort of have to attack a NATO country and see if the world rallies around Estonia or not. But I don't think you do it through Ukraine.
Firstly, Russia relied not only on the armed forces, but also on diplomacy, on human intelligence, agents of influence on the ground, and agents of influence all around Europe, and so on and so on. Because there was a German Prussian general, Clausewitz. He is still one of the most important military theorists in the world. He lived in the 19th century, and he said the war is a continuation of politics by other measures. But the Russian leadership changed this point. For the Russian leadership, the politics is a continuation of the war, but by other measures.
Yeah.
So for them, it's all about the war, and for them, destroying of NATO shouldn't come from defeat of all NATO forces somewhere in the Baltic states or somewhere in Poland or in Germany. For them, elimination of NATO can be achieved by political measures. If in case of aggression, Russia's aggression against Estonia or Lithuania or Latvia or Poland, NATO will not react in a proper way. If some members of NATO will decide to avoid participation in the conflict, it will be the end of NATO.
Yeah.
NATO may formally exist on paper, but in reality, the allies will not react. Part of allies will react, part of allies will not.
Yeah.
What will it be? It will be elimination of NATO. New aliens may appear, not 30 plus states, but 12 of them or 15 of them. But it will not be NATO like we know this now. So don't underestimate the crazy reality in which Russian leadership lives. Don't underestimate. They are fanatics. They are rational, but their rationality is based not on social sciences base, not on theories of democracy and something else. This rationality is based on idea of restoration of great power, on idea of revenge for the Cold War, on idea of restoring Russia, which we lost. Россия, которую мы потеряли. This idea appeared 50 years ago, in 1970s. And this idea spreaded among the Russian elites, especially among security forces and among the society. It's a long-standing idea.
Yeah. I just feel like, what do you think Russia defines greatness as? Because if you look at Russia through the Western lenses, like, in many ways, it's just sort of embarrassing itself.
Greatness of Russia means the greatness of the Russian elite. For them, greatness means not only a wellness, like how much billions of dollars we do have. It also means a recognition of them like a people who can decide the fate of the world. They want to be a part of the global elite. They want to play a decisive role in the world. Like, hello guys, it's a Washington DC call to you. Whether or not you will be agree if our big mining company, American big mining company, will establish a mining facility somewhere in Western Africa, because we know that you do have interests there. May we ask for your permission to do this in this specific place? I present this in a very simple way,
Yeah.
but simply speaking, that is what the Russian elite wants to achieve. What does mean greatness for them? For them, greatness means that there are regular summits of the global powers in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, somewhere else. permanent negotiations, some clubs, elitary clubs in London, in Paris,
But
formal and informal ties.
in that, if we follow that logic, I'd imagine that the Russian elite has to be incredibly mad right now. Because if you look at Russian allies, we have like Venezuela, South Africa, some other like small military dictatorships, Iran, North Korea, and it's like a junior partner to China. I feel like Russian elite was always Europe looking, like they wanted to be accepted by Europeans. Now they're very much rejected, even by countries like France that was like more friendly to them historically. Are they, is Russian elite like super upset with Putin right now because of that?
They can, reconsider this, because you do see leaders of well-corrupted, developing African countries in Moscow. But for them in Moscow, for the Russian elite, it's our influence, because tens of the leaders of the world come to us and talk to us, and they're ready to use our service, for instance, in money laundering.
Yeah, but that's not greatness, especially for Russians.
It's a tool. It's a tool. It's a leverage to influence Europe, to influence United States. The Russian elite wants to split Europe and the United States. Russian elite knows very well that there are enough of corrupted politicians in Europe with the ties in Moscow. And Russia tries to use these ties, tries to use these contradictions, and so on and so on. And Russian elite believes that one day it will win. Because if they will doubt in this, they will need to think what to do next. And as for now, they are scared to change something inside of Russia. But maybe we will see some changes. And these changes will not be democratic.
Yeah.
Because Putinism, again, appeared before Vladimir Putin came from St. Petersburg to Moscow. Putinism is a wrong term here. Authoritarianism, new Russian authoritarianism, I don't know, I'm not a fan of this term, but for me it sounds much better than Putinism. So, nevertheless, Putinism appeared before Vladimir Putin came from St. Petersburg to Moscow, and Putinism may survive without Vladimir Putin at all. Because it's about authoritarianism, it's about collective actions, it's about system of relations within the Russian elite, within the Russian society. It's about political culture, it's about institutions, how they work. And one day we can see these changes in Russia, but without giving up the original purposes.
Versus Russia, in terms of their activity in Europe, they want like a certain AFD that we see in Germany, for example, rise everywhere. All the countries, ultimately in like Russians' best dreams, all these European countries become some sort of radical right-wing authoritarian regimes. They all become very corrupt, and all of these world elites are just participating in these like corruption schemes.
Yeah, they want they want European Union less united but more nationalistic, like some national
Germans are
movement in
nationalists about Germany,
yeah,
French
Poland,
are, yeah.
France, yeah. Uh, for them it is, and they also want to survive. They are waiting for changes in other parts of the world, because they were happy when Hamas attacked Israel in October 2023. They wanted to see a big war in the Middle East, and they still want to see this. They want to see Chinese military actions in the Pacific region. They want to see this action. They want a war between the United States and China.
Yeah.
They hope on this.
In terms of when we see Russia attempting to execute a variety of different things, if we think of the initial invasion into Ukraine, if we evaluate how they even set up its military production facilities, it often seems so unsophisticated, kind of almost unprofessional. As you mentioned, this invasion was being planned for decades, but then it was probably one of the worst.
Not this precise invasion. The
Yeah.
war against the West, because they knew that they needed big stockpiles of conventional arms. They needed electronic warfare against GPS, against communication systems, and so on and so on. They developed a lot of these systems, and these systems are presented in the battlefield as they work. They produce a significant amount of air defense systems and air defense missiles, and we see that they work because they learned something from the American wars against Iraq, from NATO operation against Yugoslavia in 1999. It was one of the turning points. And they say, okay, the West relies on air power and on sophisticated communication system. What do we need to? We need to eliminate their dominance with using air defense systems and electronic warfare systems. They invested in this.
But I guess why is it so unsophisticated? And so what's wrong with Russia that it seems to just always, not in everything, but in a lot of things, just look so unprofessional, unadvanced in some way, unsophisticated?
Oh, they first of all, why it should be sophisticated? Because as we clearly saw during the last 5 years since COVID times, the most of elites in different parts of the world, the most of politicians were not too smart and not too brave. Some of them definitely were brave and are brave, were smart and are smart, but not all of them. Why Russian elite, Russian system should be too smart and too sophisticated? And for them, intention does matter. If your intention is to destroy NATO, destroy the West, destroy the global order, and you invest in this systemically, year by year, decade by decade, you will see a result. And they believe that they are much braver than Westerners because they were brave enough to launch attack against Ukraine. They were brave enough to annex Crimea in 2014, to capture Donetsk and Luhansk in 2014. They were brave enough, and they believe that they're still brave enough, much braver than European elites or American elite or Japanese elite.
But wouldn't they be more effective if they were more sophisticated, better planning, I don't know, better intelligence, better preparation?
Better planning, better intelligence means better education. Better education means people will start to think. People will become more autonomous in their daily life. It's another lesson from the Soviet era. It's another lesson from the monarchy times. If you try to make a modernization with enlightenment of people, you will have political problems. You will have troubles because people will start to think, will start to ask questions, and everything will end in collapse, in political collapse. If you want to stay in power, you shouldn't have too smart population. You should have only couple, 3, 5 relatively good universities, and that's it. And you should have another tens or hundreds of universities which give not real education, but some skills.
Yeah.
Some skills.
Engineering.
Engineering, good engineering education means education. You need some engineering skills, because to create this thing, you have to be engineer. To copy this thing, you have just be a skilled person.
Yeah.
To create a drone, you have to be an engineer. But to assemble a drone from components available from abroad, you have to be just skilled person. You don't need to be who was it guys who assemble shaheds in Alabuga, in Tatarstan of Russia. They are teenagers, 16, 17 years old. And you don't need to be a skilled engineer. You have to be a skilled person, but you don't need to be educated. You don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to be a scientist. You don't need scientists at all. Or you need some amount of them, and that's it.
How about the Meatwaves that we see on the front lines? Is that really the most effective way to do it? Wouldn't it be better to have just like a couple, 2, 3 more months of military training and actually have somebody who's more useful than just like a person that runs in front of a machine gun?
They don't have this 2, 3 months. They don't have this 2, 3 months because 2, 3 months, if you teach someone for 2, 3 months, during 2, 3 months, you need commanders, instructors, very well trained. You need some system.
But like you could copy a system. There are so many systems out there in the world that you could just. It's been so, the war has been going on for so long. You could just replicate it even.
There should be an idea, because when you recruit a person, this person comes for money. Even if this person believes it, of course, he believes usually. I mean he, because all of them, most of them, 99.99% of them are males. Yeah. This male wants money, but this male wants some moral approval for his action. And he believes that, okay, I'm going to kill these bloody Ukrainians because they hate us. They NATO puppets, and so on and so on. And NATO threatens to mother Russia. Okay. But during the 2-3 months training, even this person will start to ask questions. And finally, it may become too smart to go and die. It's much easier to take person, to recruit the person, and to send him after a couple of days of training, couple of weeks of training, to send him to the front line before he realizes what is going on, and to get another person. And also, if you have smart soldiers, you have to have smart officers. If you want to have smart soldiers, you have to have smart officers. If you have smart officers, they will become political threat to you.
To counter that a little bit, I think fair in the war in Ukraine, it really does not help any individual Russian in any way. I'm going to start asking questions and I'm not going to be willing to fight. However, if we even look back in history, World War II, there was a very clear goal and a very clear good reason for any Soviet soldier to go and defend its country. Still, what do we see? Meatwaves. So it's not just about like asking what's the goal of the war. It's just like, it's once again this like unsophisticated approach, even where it could be helpful. Like, just like always this the most like brutal, almost like vulgar solution to a problem.
During Second World War, the first 2 years of the Second World War, Soviet Union was an ally of Germany.
Yeah.
And the basic idea was, and it was represented in movies, in songs, and so on. The basic idea was to go to Europe and to capture Europe, to make them communistic. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in June 1941, the Soviet army, the most of the Soviet army, just disappeared. It just disappeared. Not because they died, killed, they disappeared. They just put their tanks, put their machine guns, and left the theater.
Really? Where did they go?
To home.
Well, they would go to prison.
No. Well, if it is a land captured by German army, there is no prisons, so Soviet prison. Right. They just disappeared. A couple of millions of them became prisoners of war. I mean, they were encircled and captured by German forces. But another millions, they just disappeared. They became normal citizens. I mean,
so they burned their like military codes.
Yes.
They were like,
yes.
I'm a potato farmer.
Yes. Yeah. And only the totalitarian measures made by the Soviet leadership made this war like patriotic war, because they took people, they told them, if Germans will come, you will die, because they will kill you. People didn't have information. Even today in Russia, where all the information is available, millions of people believe that NATO is adversary of Russia. And Ukrainians, they are cruel, brutal Nazis. Everything is available. People just don't want to know this. And they're ready to get the information which the government provides for them. Soviet Union in 1941. People even didn't have a radio at home. The most of the information came from governmental newspapers or from radio on the squares.
Wait, 1991?
No, 1941.
Oh, yeah.
41. And Soviet Union told the people, if Germans will come, you will die.
Well, that's not wrong. Slavic people were considered Untermensch.
We know that German army killed Jews, and but German army did not kill too many Slavic people in Ukraine, in Belarus, or in occupied parts of Russia. And we also know that a lot of Russians are anti-Semitic, and for them, killing Jews was also kind of okay. We can help them to do this awful thing. I mean, for totalitarian state, it wasn't too hard to argue people that guys, you have to go and die in the war, because if German will come, you will die. If German army will come, you will die. If you decide not to join the Soviet army, you will die because we are going to kill you anyway. If you go to the war, maybe you will survive somehow.
But why like this? We have United Kingdom, we have United States. Also, they're not even directly being, like, United States is not directly attacked by Germany, is not a direct threat per se. They're people, volunteers, they want to go do it. The message is very clear. Germany is very much an evil thing. It's a good thing to go fight.
Because democracy and republic are also ideas.
Yeah.
In the Soviet Union, it wasn't like that. Because Americans who fought for liberation of Europe, they fought for liberation of Europe. They fought for freedom of other people. The Soviet soldiers, they never fought for freedom.
So because there was no this like idea
there was no such idea at all.
So Meatwaves is the only way.
Meatwaves, yes, is the only way of fighting in these political circumstances of Russia. But very inefficient way of fighting. Because of what? Because in contrast with 1940s, where Meatwaves were supported by American weapons and by American food supplies and uniform supplies and communication cable supplies and so on, a lot of things America supplied. Meatwaves now, firstly, there is a completely different demographic situation in Russia. Secondly, the Meatwaves now, in face of well-trained and relatively advanced Ukrainian army, the Meatwaves now they allow Russia to push Ukrainian army back somehow. Because geography of the theater also does matter. And it's hard to defend that land. But to push back doesn't mean to defeat. Russian army, since the last Russian victory, according to the Russian military doctrine, took place in Mariupol in May 2022, because they were able to encircle Ukrainian forces and to defeat them Since that time, Russia tried to repeat this in a scaled way. In Bakhmut, in Avdiivka, in Ugledar, and so on and so on. Russia was not able to do this. Push Ukrainian army back and capture another square kilometer of empty land, of desert.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this Midgrinder allows to do, but nothing else. And that's why even Russian officers, they who are a little bit smarter than their colleagues, they who works in general staff, they raise these questions that, guys, capturing territory can be only a side effect of successful operation. The main operational goal, the main goal of any operation can be only defeat of adversary. Whether or not it is a small group of adversary during the tactical operation, or it is a big group of forces during the theater level operation. If adversary is not defeated, if adversary just pushed back, and if you capture only another square kilometer of territory, the operation is not successful. You cannot consider this operation as successful.
Why does Russia bomb train stations and hospitals and just regular sleeping quarters, like apartment buildings?
Because terroristic measures are implemented in the Russian military doctrine. Because for them, since 1930s, for them, it is an acceptable method of war. Because you need not only defeat adversary's army, you needed to demoralize and to disintegrate the society, adversary's society. It's like any terrorists who captured airplanes or captured hostages in, I know, trade malls or somewhere else. They all had the same purposes.
Doesn't it mobilize the population to like fight against Russia more, hate Russia more?
Yes, but they don't understand this, because from 1930s they thought that okay, it works. You need just to increase the level of terror, and people one day people will be broken, psychologically broken, and they will say, okay, it's your power, we delegate our freedoms. No, it works like this. And they understood, Russian military leadership, political leadership, they understood what they did in Bucha, in Kramatorsk, and many other places where they did this terror. And they understand what they do now when these terroristic methods, they are in use regularly. They need to say to the people, to the Russian people, that no, we bomb another hospital because it wasn't a hospital, it was like a headquarters of...
secret headquarters.
Yeah. And we bombed the train station with refugees because at the same time there was a military echelon with military train with tanks.
Yeah.
And because of what? Because the information is still available. Even if people don't want to know this information is much more available now than 50 years ago. And you have to demoralize adversary society, but you have to keep morality in your society. Like one of my I'm afraid former friends told me in April 2022 when he asked me, "What do you think about Bucha?" It was in Russia. "What do you think about Bucha?" I told him, "Everything is clear and evident. I don't need to think about this.
Yeah.
I need to think what's wrong with us
Yeah.
as Russians." And he told me, I don't believe in this. I don't believe that Bucha took place, that Irpin took place. I believe that it was like a theater. I asked him, "Sorry, why?" And he said, "Because if I recognize," he's smart enough. He got his master degree from Manchester University.
Yeah.
He said, "If I recognize that the Russian army made these war crimes, I will need to commit suicide. I don't want to commit suicide. I don't want to believe in this. I believe that it was a theater."
That's a ridiculous statement to make.
It's a ridiculous statement, but you can imagine that millions of Russians, tens of millions of Russians, maybe 90% of Russian population believe in this, and think like this guy. And you also can imagine that not so many of them have a good education. Most of them are badly educated.
Yeah.
And for them to believe in theater, that Bucha never existed, for them it is even easier than for this guy with good education in economics.
I'm sure that guy deep down knows what happened. Like
I don't know what's about now. We last time we spoke in April 2022.
Yeah.
He's in Russia, and he pretends to work in commercial sector, or maybe now in state-owned sector. I don't know. He was not going to join armed forces, definitely. He just pretends that the war does not exist, like many other Russians who do not care about Kursk, Crimea, Donetsk. Of course not.
Yeah.
It's a kind of interim immigration. They immigrated from reality. But nevertheless, according to the polls, they're tired from the war, but they still support the Russian army. They declare, "Oh, I support the actions of the Russian army." That means they de facto support the war.
Yeah.
And you may say in polls that more than 50% of Russia want a peace deal, want a ceasefire, or something like this. There was a huge wave of optimism in January 2025 in Russia, irrational wave of optimism, because they believed Donald Trump will come and this guy kick ass of Zelensky or something like that. Now there is no such an optimism, of course, in Russia, but more than 50% of them are ready for peace deal. But more than 60 or even 70, I don't remember the last numbers, percent of them at the same time, they want peace deal, but they support armed forces of Russia. So you cannot be in between. Either you're against the war and you cannot support even your army, or you support your army and that means you support the war and all these war crimes.
Yeah.
And you don't believe, and you pretend that you don't believe in these war crimes because Russian army cannot do this.
I personally don't think Russia is going to try to genuinely find some sort of way to sign a peace deal anytime soon.
For them, it's not a favorable condition. They need peace deal. They need ceasefire, but they need Ukraine is the side which ask for peace because of defeat of group of power, group of forces somewhere in the front line, because of demoralization of Ukrainian society by terroristic measures and so on and so on.
But that's not going to happen. I don't think.
Yeah, but they cannot act in other way. What to do? Okay, they may say, guys, we are tired. Let's make it ceasefire. What next? Because ceasefire means that these soldiers, the Russian soldiers who are in the front line, who did not get a victory, what will they do when they come to Russia?
Well, can't you just... wouldn't Russians be able to twist it so that we did get a victory? Can they just like... There have been so many lies already. Why can't they just say we won?
But you can say something to your population. You can create a picture of victory for them, but you cannot create a picture for these people. You cannot create the picture of victory for them. They will be dissatisfied. What to do next? Either to start another war or to lose power.
So,
because these people, when they will come, tens of thousands of them will come. It will be a huge wave of criminal activity in Russia. And this criminal activity will tend to become kind of political activity, because these people they will ask not about money or sexual satisfaction, but also they will ask for respect. They will ask for status. It's political.
And I guess for those who don't follow, I think we have already... So there are a lot of people who were taken out of Russian prisons, sent to the front lines. They're freed because they fought on the front lines.
That's why there is another reason for meat grinder.
Yeah.
Because most of them will never come back.
Yeah. But the ones that come back, there were a lot of murders in terms of like...
We know that there is an increase of murders among the veterans, because they came back because they wounded, terribly wounded. So some of them lost legs, hands, and so on. They, even without one arm, you can kill someone with a knife. They I would say, we know that there is increase, but we still don't have a proper data, because Russian authorities, they made this data classified. They made this data secret, and we do not. We do have statistics for the previous 20 plus years, year by year, how many murders were in Russia, how many robberies were in Russia, and so on and so on. But we don't have statistics for 2022, 2023, 2024. We know there is increase, and the authority recognizes. But whereas these numbers within the context of previous 20 plus years, whether or not, okay, these numbers are bigger than in 2021 or 2020, but whether or not they're bigger than 2012, 2011, and we
Yeah.
don't have data, so we cannot analyze this properly.
So
We can suspect that because we do have previous experience. For example, after the Soviet war in Afghanistan, when 600,000 veterans appeared in the Soviet Union, 600,000. Not all of them, of course, became criminals, but even those hundreds of them who became criminals, they created a completely different criminal environment in Russia.
Yeah.
In post-Soviet Russia. Chechen War, yeah, there is not the same, but similar consequences. Towards this war, of course, the consequences would be much more terrible for Russia. But we don't have data to make a proper conclusions, to make a proper analysis of this. We can only extrapolate previous knowledge and to say, okay, it would be terrible.
So
but how terrible, we don't know.
In terms of sort of, I don't know, coming to a conclusion, agreement, whatever it is with the war in Ukraine, what would be the Russians' like leadership thinking? Because they aren't successful in breaking the Ukrainian spirit. It's hard to imagine they would. Now we have, I guess, like Trump that is getting more and more frustrated with them. What
they will hope on more chaos. They will create more chaos in Africa, in Middle East, somewhere else. They will hope. They will still hope on the war between China and the United States. They will still hope on the war between Iran and Israel, plus Saudi Arabia and other Persian Gulf monarchies against Iran. They will hope on tensions between Turkey and Israel, Turkey and NATO allies. They will hope on economic depression in the United States. They will hope on domestic political chaos in Ukraine. They will bet on this. And at the same time, they will integrate Belarus into Russia deeply. Mm-hmm. Create more military bases in Belarus.
So
for getting more room for maneuver, as against Ukraine, as against Baltic states. They will do this work. You know, a couple of days ago, Indonesia told Indonesian officials told to Australian officials during their meeting negotiations that, oh, Russians asked us about air base for our for their strategic aviation in our islands. Of course, it wouldn't be a kind of big air base. It would be like an airfield where the Russian strategic bombers can get fuel and some rest for crews. But why does Russia need the place in Indonesia? In terms of military, no, Russia doesn't need this. But in terms of demonstration that we are capable.
Yeah.
Our aviation has a global range, and in terms of creating more chaos in the region, in terms of making the military situation in the region more complicated, Russia will continue its efforts. And also imagine ceasefire with Russia. How many countries in the world, even if they are small, corrupted, and even not developing, poor countries, they will realize, okay, these guys under international criminal court investigations, these guys violated all the international laws which exist in this world. They're still permanent members of United Nations Security Council. They captured territories, and they kept control over this captured territories. Everything is possible for them, and they are even not too rich, not too advanced in terms of industry, science, and so on. They only invested in tanks, in gun fodder, and in nuclear arms. What do we need? Oh, gun fodder. Okay, a lot of gun fodder here because our demographic situation allows us to get this gun fodder. Or some battle tanks, we can get them, or we can make an armored trucks, something like that. What do we need? We need only nuclear weapons. And we can do everything. We can do everything possible. And any ceasefire with the Russian current circumstances will create more turbulence in the world by itself.
So Russia's just going to wait and wait and wait. What's going to make it stop waiting?
Russia is not only waiting. Russia is acting. Russia continues terror against Ukraine. Russia continues fighting.
But what will make it stop? There's got to be
more weapons for Ukraine.
Yeah.
More weapons for Ukraine. Doesn't matter who will pay for these weapons. Whether or not it will be American taxpayers, or it will be European taxpayers, or it will be Ukrainian taxpayers, and it will be a kind of loan. Ukraine will pay for this loan for next 50 years. That doesn't matter. More weapons for Ukraine. Assistance with ballistic missile program in Ukraine, because Ukraine needs not only in making Russian society tired from the war, more losses, more attrition, more exhaustion, and so on and so on. Of course, Ukraine is doing this job.
Yeah.
But Ukraine needs to eliminate Russia as a threat, as a military threat, long-term existential threat for Ukraine. How to do this? Eliminate Russian industrial capacity. Russian military-industrial complex is huge enough, but there are several knots. There are several key facilities.
So you just have to bomb them, or
yes.
But
it's my vision. Last year I even published a paper about this. That okay, Russian military-industrial complex has more than 1,000 facilities.
And does Ukraine just not have enough missiles to be able to?
Yeah, and not enough range.
Yeah.
And if Ukraine will be able to hit just 15 key facilities on the European part of Russia, it will be a terrible damage for Russian military capabilities. If Ukraine will be able to hit 20 or 30 of these facilities, the damage will be irreversible for Russia. Okay, it can be like Hamas, but against Hamas you can just dig a deeper borders, tunnels, against them, and that's it.
So what equipment do you need? Those towers, or like what do you need to be able to hit them?
Towers, there are not too many towers. Ballistic missiles. Ukraine has technologies. Ukraine needs more components and needs maybe some more production facilities to produce enough amount of this ballistic missiles. And and of course Ukraine need hundreds of these missiles, not tens of them, hundreds of them, and there is nothing impossible. All these technologies are from 1960s, 1970s. You don't need, a sophisticated rocket to achieve Mars. You need just a normal rocket, normal missile, normal ballistic missile, because ballistic missiles have a better speed specifications. Ballistic missile which can carry a warhead, conventional warhead, to the distance from 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers.
How about Crimean Bridge? I feel like that used to be such a big part of the current discussion.
Crimean Bridge itself, it is not valuable to destroy Crimean Bridge itself.
But the society, like the
society,
morale.
It will be a satisfaction, but if you destroy a bridge without any further actions, the bridge will be restored sooner or later. Destruction of Crimean Bridge, Kerch Bridge, how we can call this, is valuable if your troops are going to come to Crimea.
Which used to be a plan, but no longer.
I don't know what was the plan.
Yeah, that's fair. So, like, I guess to sort of speculate in the future as much as we can, it seems like the United States has to get frustrated enough with Russia to reverse and start sending more and more weapons again, or do you?
I don't know. I don't know how to study frustration, because it's something from psychology. I know that support of Ukraine, all range of support, economic support, military support of Ukraine, is a part of American strategic interests, because Russian purpose is destroying NATO. What does it mean? It means undermining American leadership. American leadership, it is not something for proud only. It's about economic prosperity of America. It's about industrial capabilities of America. It's about scientific capabilities of America. It's a profit of leadership. And there are guys who say, "Oh, we are going to destroy all this." And you tell them, "Okay, guys, maybe we need to negotiate with you. We need to, I don't know what. We need to make a ceasefire with you. We need to be a broker of why? You need to give as many weapons as possible to the guys who oppose to this crazy people in Moscow, and that's it. Nothing else. But also you have to be prepared for any troubles which these guys can create. You have to be prepared for offensive operations against Russia, just in case, because they are enemies.
Yeah.
Enemies with nuclear arms. You have to be prepared. Ukraine will do its job. But Ukraine cannot change Russia. Ukraine may make Russia weaker, irreversibly weaker. But Ukraine cannot, change power in Russia, change regime in Russia. Ukraine cannot denuclearize Russia. America must think how to denuclearize Russia just in case. There was also a discussion about this in 2023.
Why would Russia ever denuclearize? Is it possible? It seems like an impossible task.
Everything is possible. We began our conversation today from North Korean army is fighting against Ukrainian army on the Russian soil.
Yeah.
And there was Prigozhin mutiny. And if Russia is going to become like a Somali, we have to think about what to do with the Russian nuclear arms, nuclear weapons. And there was a discussion about this in 2023, in May 2023, before Prigozhin's meeting. It was funny. And I believe there is a solution. I wrote a paper about this. The paper is published. And there is a solution. In case of chaos inside of Russia, it's possible to denuclearize Russia without occupation of the whole Russian territory.
What was your suggestion on that?
The key Russian industrial facilities related to nuclear arms, they're located across the 700 kilometers of 700 kilometer road, or we can call this highway. Sometimes it's not highway, it's a road. And this road is located not somewhere in the north. This road is located close to, this road begins on the Russian border with Kazakhstan and goes strictly to the north. It's just 700 kilometers. It's everything achievable. Oh, it was a kind of brainstorming. Don't take it too serious. I mean,
how would you access that? Because Kazakhstan.
You need Kazakhstan on board. You need Kazakhstan as an ally. And Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan doesn't like Russia, but they know that's sort of where they are.
They don't need to participate. They just need to give access. And that's it. Just give access to the good guys, and these good guys will use your territory to achieve this road. And 700 kilometers, it's just nothing. I mean, helicopters and other types of things they can achieve. They can put this road under control. If you control this territory, this road, you control all the manufacturing of nuclear weapons in Russia, and not only manufacturing but also maintaining procedures.
Yeah.
And if you can control maintaining procedures, you control everything, regardless where the nuclear arms storage base is located. There are some other, of course, questions, but I described almost all of them in my paper. It was published. It was written in May 2023. It was published in June 2023, but before Prigozhin's invasion and Prigozhin's mutiny.
It was one of the craziest things I've ever followed.
It's a crazy thing, but I was inspired by the paper of one of much more experienced colleague who said that also in his paper. He said that, okay, we have to think about Russian nuclear, but it looks like we don't have plan for this. We need to develop plans, and we need to discuss plans. And he published this, and I decided, okay, if we need to discuss this, I will be the guy who is ready to discuss this. Let's start the discussion.
Yeah.
There was a kind of discussion, but then Prigozhin's mutiny appeared, and everyone were captured by what's going on with Russia itself. But nevertheless, we can continue to discuss what to do with the Russian nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And how how to denuclearize Russia, just in case of, there will be chaos, domestic political chaos in Russia. If there will not be domestic political chaos in Russia, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
We can continue disarmament. Together with China, without China, doesn't matter. Because nuclear arms, it is also a huge economic burden for Russia. And Russia does not need such amount of nuclear warheads. Even if we can agree that Russia may need nuclear arms for defense, okay. Let's imagine. But Russia doesn't need this 1,500 warheads. And this 400 or 500 carriers of nuclear arms.
Why do you think West is not more aggressive with giving Ukraine weapons, not more aggressive in regards like just being very vocal about Russia is the enemy, it's a very bad country? Like there's not that unity.
They're vocal. There are objective obstacles. First of all, industrial capabilities of Europe and the United States. Because even if you are the most developed industrial powers in the world, in previous 30 years, you were disarming.
Yeah.
Intentionally disarming. And after that, it's hard to restore. It's hard to relaunch that, Cold War era mode of operations. And it takes time to relaunch this manufacturing. It takes time to understand what do you need, because something you need now, but you have to plan what will you need in the next 10, 15, 20 years. Because you may start producing something and it will become useless in the next couple of years. What will you do with these facilities?
Yeah.
So I don't think that the West has become less active in support. No, they support Ukraine, but I think they can do more, and they need to do more. In terms of what to do with Russia, yes, they don't understand what to do with Russia, because everyone, even me as a Russian citizen, everyone thought in 2022 that, okay, these guys are mad. I mean, in Moscow, they're crazy. They began the war they cannot win. They began the war that they shouldn't begin.
Yeah.
And so on. But maybe they do have some remnants of common rationality, and they will stop the war before too late. They will recognize, okay, it was a mistake. It was a mistake. We can repay the damage. We can discuss some post-war issues. We even already killed all these war criminals occasionally. Sorry for that. But they didn't do this. And they put all in.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that Russia should be defeated, must be defeated, but for the politicians in Europe and in the United States, it's the question, what does mean defeat, Russia's defeat for Russia? because who will take responsibility for what will be with Russia after the war? And that's the question. They still hope that Russians have some remnants of common rationality. I presume it is a mistake, but I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
I don't take responsibility for decisions. I can say, okay, guys, so you can do like this, according to my study. But my study may be wrong, because I work with data, but maybe there is something that I don't know. My colleagues do the same job, and we may be wrong.
Yeah.
And politicians, they are, okay, what to do with this? Because we will be these guys with responsibility. Who will be responsible for the consequences?
Yeah. So I know this is
in my opinion, I'm simple enough. The burden of the war, the burden of losses, must become so high for Russia that Russia will agree to give up all the occupied territories without, Ukrainian offensive operations against these territories. Just, guys, we are ready to give everything back. Just stop beating us. And that's it. That's it. So Russia must suffer losses, more losses. How to increase Russia's losses? Help Ukraine with ballistic missiles, and Ukraine will destroy Russian industrial capabilities. Yeah.
And I have one last question about the potential future. Do you think, as long as the current regime in Russia is in power, there is any world where Russia doesn't keep waging war? Because it seems like to be the whole thesis of the current regime.
I still have some hope that people can learn from something, especially they can learn from their bad experience. And if the Russian society, the Russian political elite, will learn from their bad experience, they may change their behavior. Maybe, I'm afraid, the experience must be bad enough. And maybe now this experience is not considered as too bad. So it depends on the allies. I mean, Ukraine plus Europeans plus Americans plus other allies. It depends on them how bad the Russian experience will be. And if this experience will be bad enough for Russia, Russia will say, okay, guys, we are ready. We are ready to discuss how we are going to withdraw from all the occupied territories of Ukraine, how we are going to be a normal country again, without this stupid concept of greatness.
Yeah.
Without the stupid ideas of restoring empire and so on, and revenge for the Cold War, and corrections, the historical mistakes, and so on and so on.
Does the political elite in Russia have big sway on Putin, or is it rather minimal?
I always say, don't focus on Putin personally. Don't try to understand what is in his head.
Really?
It doesn't matter at all. We deal with a group of people. This group is big enough. It's well indoctrinated. Some of them are fanatics, some of them less fanatics than others, but it's a group of people. Putin is just a representative of this idea, this group of people, and he plays his role. He's responsible for his areas of responsibility, but he is not alone.
But he's in the leading. He's ultimately like the final say. Do you think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that because when you say your final word, there should be people who will reply to your final word. I agree with this, or I disagree with this. It's not Putin. And these people like the situation when Putin takes this responsibility.
Yeah.
Because it's a comfortable situation for them. Because any of them, any person of them thinks not only, okay, I delegate my responsibility to this guy, Vladimir Putin, on exchange of power, prosperity, and calm. Because he is a war criminal. Maybe I'm not a war criminal.
Yeah.
And but also this person thinks about what other persons around think. Because if this person will take too much responsibility instead of delegate this responsibility to Vladimir Putin, other persons around might say, okay, this guy is too ambitious and maybe too dangerous. We have it's a collective system.
Mm-hmm.
Where one person personal his psychology is important but not too important. I don't believe in this. And for me, it's not a good way of discussion, but we need some comparisons. We have to compare this situation with something that we know. And I like to ask people, students sometimes, that, okay, or some of my colleagues, okay, you say that Russian regime is personalistic dictatorship and Vladimir Putin controls everything. Whether or not a Hitler's regime in Germany was a personalistic regime, people say, yeah, it was personalistic. Hitler in power, and he was responsible for many things. But my next question is that, okay, January 1942, the meeting in Wannsee conference,
Mm-hmm.
There were 15 people during this meeting. No Hitler at all. He did not participate in this meeting. He did not participate. 15 people who decided to kill all the Jews. Who decided to kill? There was no Hitler at all.
But didn't he like shape the narratives and the principles under which these people were operating ultimately?
Some of these people denied their participation in the conference until 1950s. And no one could prove their participation until some documents appeared, were found, and so on and so on. It was hard to find the correct proof that this person participated in the Wannsee conference. And Hitler was dead. And his some other cronies were dead. Some of participants of this meeting were dead. And people who survived said, I did not participate in this.
Yeah.
I'm not guilty at all.
No.
I did not make this decision. It's a collective thing. It's a collective thing. No, I don't believe in personal dictatorships at all. That mean, you know, there is a political theory of authoritarian regimes. And say this is classification: personalistic regimes. This is semi-personal. I think it's all bullshit. Sorry. Hopefully, your podcast allows me to use this word, because I believe we have to reconsider significant parts of modern political theory, because we don't have personalistic dictatorship in Russia. We don't have person as a symbol. Oh, maybe yes, but what's about functions? He plays his role. Other people play their roles. That's it. And they are all responsible. Russian society is responsible for the war. It's not about people around here, around this area. They sometimes ask, "Oh, you are talking about collective responsibility." It's not a good thing. Come on, guys, it's a republic. Russia is a republic. Republic means republic. Res publicae. Common responsibility for decision making. People in Russia agree with this. They delegate their freedoms, they delegate their responsibilities to Moscow. Inside Moscow, people inside the ruling class, people delegate responsibility from the bottom levels to the top levels. Okay,
I agree with what you're saying, but I think
that means that what I told at the beginning. Putinism appeared before Vladimir Putin and may survive Vladimir Putin perfectly. These people, of course, with some changes in persons, but structurally, these people may survive Vladimir Putin, and this regime may survive with some changes, maybe some reforms, maybe some liberal trends. But until the idea of this great power, idea of empire exists, Russia will be the same.
I have one last question for you. I think there are a lot of misunderstandings in American society about what's going on in Ukraine, misunderstandings about Russia. If you could clear just one of them, what would you like to, what message?
Biggest misunderstanding, in my opinion, is that people think, oh, Russians and Ukrainians, they're similar. Okay, they do have a little bit different cultural representations. Ukrainians still have Vyshivanka, and Russians had Kosovorotka, but forgot about this. No, not big deal. But and people say, oh, Ukrainians are corrupted, Russians are corrupted. Whom we support? The problem is that, first of all, show me a country in this world without corruption at all. Show me. Because maybe only Singapore.
That was
but Singapore, it is a city, firstly. Small country, city, but authoritarian enough. They try to be good because they are small enough and a lot of big threats around.
Yeah.
Sometimes threats around, essential threats around, make you better because it's a matter of your survival. But what is different between Ukraine and Russia? What is the main difference? Besides culture, I'm not specialist in culture. In politics, I realized this only in 2014, 2015. I never thought about this before. But when I started to think about this, self-governance.
Yes.
You asked me about democracy, authoritarianism. Democracy begins not from presidential elections, not from parliamentary elections, from the self-governance on the bottom level. And there is a self-governance in Ukraine, and there is no self-governance in Russia. Even the Russian Constitution of 1993, before all the amendments of 2020, the Constitution tried to avoid the issue of self-governance. They mentioned self-governance, but before the implementation of self-governance, the Russian parliament, the Russian government, they must pass a law about self-governance. And they tried not to do this. They did this only in 2003. Mm-hmm. 10 years after the Constitution, they avoided the issue of self-governance. The local government system was almost like in Soviet times. They tried to avoid. Then they passed the law about self-governance. Liberal enough, 2003. And immediately after this, they began a process of dismantlement of self-governance. Self-governance was not able to appear, but it was dismantled. Since 2004, they cancelled, they began a cancellation of mayor elections in big cities firstly. They cancelled governor elections. So on. But formally, self-governance was an independent level of the Russian system, according to the constitution.
Interesting.
But no one followed the rules. In 2020, when they passed the amendments in the constitution, one of the most important amendment was not, Putin may re-elected himself several times more. No, it doesn't matter for me. The main point was that there is no self-governance anymore in Russia, like an independent level of governance. Self-governance of Russia is a part of state government.
Yeah.
That is it. They eliminated any opportunity for democracy, any word of autonomy. And you know what? Show me any of the current Russian oppositional leaders in exile who speak about this.
I have never heard about it.
No. They speak a lot of things about how good they are, how bad Vladimir Putin. The war is bad, but we are not going to ask people to support Ukrainian armed forces. We want to make meetings with Russian flags on Berlin streets, but we are not going to talk about self-governance. Without self-governance, the democracy is impossible at all. If there is self-governance, it doesn't matter how long your prime minister is in power, or how much times your president is elected. Of course, it's always better to have a rotation.
Yeah.
2 terms, that's good. We do see the experience of Germany. A general chancellor was the same person since 2005 until when 2021.
A little too long, yeah.
A little bit too long. And now Germany faces consequences. Not good enough. I mean, in terms of economy and so on, some crisis. Even this rise of radical party.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is a strong self-government in Germany. And German democracy is okay. There is a strong self-governance system in the United States. And the democracy is strong for 250 years, more than 250 years. And there is a self-governance, maybe not so strong like in the United States or Germany, but relatively strong. The strongest self-governance, the strongest in the post-Soviet countries, the strongest self-governance in Ukraine.
And it's becoming better and better. They're furthering like laws. For example, something I really enjoyed seeing, like in Russia, you collect taxes from all of the from everywhere, all the territories, and then that goes to the central government. Now in Ukraine, a lot of tax money goes just to the region and never goes to Kiev, which I think is very good.
And you can elect your mayors, you can elect your I don't know, village mayor.
Yeah.
How it calls. And that's why there is democracy in Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine is not so rich a country, is not so powerful country like Germany, or Poland. But nevertheless, Ukraine is a democratic country. And the democracy there is sustainable enough. It is not in crisis or like, I don't know, like in Serbia.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.